All right, welcome everybody around the world. Welcome to all my subscribers. I'm going to do a very quick video here, very quick message for everybody. I've talked about these things before. I've read the verses many times before. I cover them in great detail in my book. I urge everybody to go to Amazon and get my book on the 7 pillars of scriptural proof for the 2023-2024 end days. So this video here is going to be very, very short. I have very limited time, less than 5 minutes. So please consider that. I'm not going to bring in all the mountains of supporting evidence and talk about all the interrelated things. To keep it very simple, over the last week or so, I've been trying hard to think, is there like a home run, hard-hitting place where Jesus or God themselves, instead of disciples or people, but is there a place, a verse where they said that there's going to be 2,000 years until the end? We know Jesus, as I talked about in my other videos, I'm not here to describe again, but Jesus died in 26 AD because that was 483 years after King Artaxerxes' decree to rebuild Jerusalem, both street and wall. This is verified to have taken place in 457 BC. 483 years later means Jesus must have died in 26 AD, which means 3 years prior he was baptized in 23 AD. Okay, there's in my book there's so many other prophecies in the Bible that all link to 2023 that tie into this one, but I'm just here to focus on this. So there is more supporting evidence, but what I wanted was a verse, like I said, where Jesus says there's going to be 2,000 years. Now, I'm not here to fuss over exactly what year it's going to happen. I really don't care if it's going to be 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. If it's happening in my lifetime, that makes it very relevant to me. It's happening in the next few years, that makes it very pertinent. Okay, so I'm just going to clarify that now. So whether it is 2,000 years from his baptism, I think it is because of all the other supporting evidence and prophecies that I cover in my book. That would point to 23, 24. But if it goes up to 26, 27, 28, whatever, I'm not fussed. Okay, so I'm just making that clear now. So we're talking about imminent nonetheless. Okay, but I think most likely based on the evidence, 23 or 24. Okay, which would mean it would go 2,000 years from his baptism point. Okay, now remember, at his baptism, he had just defeated Satan at the temptation, just been baptized, just been approved and appointed by God as the Messiah. He was blessed with the Holy Spirit at that point. It descended like a dove. We all know that. He went around and started doing all the great miracles at this point and started teaching in the gospel and all that. Okay, so it was a very pivotal point, 23 AD. So nonetheless, I wanted to find a verse, if there was one, where Jesus says 2,000 years. So long story short, there is one. I've known about it this whole time. I covered it in my book and everything, but it didn't really sink in as a standalone home run, hard hitting verse. But it actually does. So we're going to start off with Psalm 90, verse 4, very quick. Everybody knows this verse. This isn't conjecture. So it says, "For 1,000 years in thine eyes are as yesterday, for passeth on, yea, watch by night." This is the verse that Judaism and Christianity have always said is the proof that a day with God is like 1,000 years. Okay, but what everybody's overlooked, I think, is where it also says, "Yea, it passeth on." For it passeth on, yea, a watch by night. So it's calling 1,000-year period a watch. Now, this is very relevant if we then go down to the Gospels in the New Testament. So for this, we go Matthew, like 24, Mark around chapter 13, and Luke around chapter 12. Okay, so very, very quickly, I'm going to breeze through these verses. In Matthew 24:42, Jesus says, "Watch therefore, because ye have not known in what hour your Lord does come." So he's instructing us to watch. Okay. Matthew 24:43, "And this know that if the master of the house had known in what watch the thief does come," the thief being Jesus here, "he had watched and not suffered his house to be broken through." That's a direct reference to show us that we are supposed to watch these watches. We know from Psalm 90 that a watch is 1,000 years. Okay. Matthew 25:13 says, "Watch therefore, for ye have not known the day or the hour in which the Son of Man does come." So there's lots of instruction to watch. Okay. But it definitely does pertain to watching the watches, which are periods of 1,000 years. So all this is backed up, scripturally verified, like I said, so far. Then we get into Matthew 26. This gets into my book. It takes about half an hour to talk about this, so I don't have time to talk about it. But it's the story of the prayer in Gethsemane, where Jesus told the disciples to stay, wait, and watch while he goes away in the wilderness to pray. He says a very important prayer that's actually linked to the 2023 end times. It's incredible. I cover that in my book. But keep things simple. He goes away 3 times. Each time that he comes back from saying the same prayer, the disciples have failed him by falling asleep and not watching. And he rebukes them for it. So what we see there is that there are 2 times that he goes away, 2 watches, and returns and finds them asleep. He goes away for a third, but doesn't specify that they failed on the third. Okay. So that's a very interesting story. The Gethsemane story, right? I covered in my book more so, but I just want to mention in Matthew 26:38, this is where Jesus said to them, exceedingly sorrowful is my soul unto death. Abide ye here and watch with me. So that is also tied into what I'm presenting here today as evidence. If we go down to the next gospel real quick, Mark 13, again, the same thing. Take heed, watch and pray, for ye have not known when the time is. Some more instruction to watch. This one's important. Mark 13:34. Jesus is saying, as a man who has gone abroad, so he's leaving, just like Gethsemane, to go away, and then he'll come back after that watch. It says, having left this house and given to his servants the authority, and to each one his work, he did command also the porter that he may watch. So again, this is instruction for us to watch. Right? Mark 13:35, watch ye therefore, for ye have not known when the Lord of the house does come, at evening or at midnight or at cock crowing or at the morning. Mark 13:37, what I say to you, I say to all, watch. You got the Gethsemane story as well, paralleled in these chapters as well. And then we get to Luke, and this is the penultimate verse here, right? Where does Jesus talk about 2,000 years? Where does Jesus put a time period to this, like a number to how many watches we have to wait for his return? So for this, we go into Luke 12. We go down to around verse 36. And it says here, and be like to men waiting for their Lord when he shall return out of the wedding feast, that he having come and knocked immediately they may open to him. Happy those servants whom the Lord having come shall find watching. Verily I say to you, he will gird himself and will cause them to recline at meat, and having come near will minister to them. And if he may come in the second watch and in the third watch, in the third watch he may come and may find it so, happy are those servants. And so what this shows us is that there's a total of 3 watches being spoken about here. This is important because we know that from when Jesus baptized or died, like I said, I'm not going to fuss over a few years, whichever one you want to pick. I think it's the baptism. But we know that there's 2,000 years until the 6,000th year, which is another chapter I cover in my book. The 6,000th year from Seth is actually 2023, 2024. There's more supporting evidence again. So we know that's 2,000. We know that there's going to be a millennial Sabbath of rest for the earth. So we know that there's going to be 3,000 years. It's backed up and corroborated by the biblical chronology, which points to 23, 24. Okay, so when Jesus talks about these 3 watches, the first one would be like 1023 AD. Ironically, there was a massive earthquake that shattered the Dome of the Rock, which is the abomination on the Temple Mount, in that year. And this would have been the year that Satan would have been put into the abyss prison for a 1,000-year period to be released at the end of days to fight Jesus at his arrival. Very, very interesting. Earthquakes have not happened at the Dome of the Rock other than at that time, and I think one other very minor earthquake. It had to be rebuilt then in 1023 AD. So that's interesting and ironic, but nonetheless, that's when the first watch would have been. Okay, the second watch is 2023, 2024. The third watch will be at the end of the millennial Sabbath. Okay, so it fits with the pattern. So where did Jesus talk about 2,000 years, 3,000 years? There you go. At the first watch, according to the Gethsemane story, Jesus comes back and finds the people asleep. So 1023 AD, that's not the due time of the end. Of course, they'd be asleep, right? And it was. And then in 2023, 2024, we're still waiting for that one. It could happen any point this year or in 2024 for this second watch. Okay, and it says that he will come back and find them sleeping again. At the third watch, it doesn't specify that they're asleep. This will be at the end of the millennial Sabbath. Okay, when everything will be fully completed then. So anyways, that's the evidence that I wanted to show for the short video. I got to get going because I'm going to be late. So there you go. That's the proof where Jesus actually puts a number to this and where it can all be scripturally verified. Okay, a watch is 1,000 years. That's a day unto God. How many watches are there going to be after Jesus? A total of 3. Okay, this was made known. Okay, and we know. Anyways, so take care, folks. God bless.